Welcome into Tech Daily, your daily source for today's tech and social media news in 10 minutes or less. Today is Monday, March 19th, 2012. I'm Jacob Bodner. Let's get started today with Apple. Yet again, Apple is at the top of our headlines. One of these days, we're going to have a show where Apple isn't the number one story in the news, but alas, that day is not today. Today, Apple released a couple things. The first thing being essentially what they're going to do with their hoard of cash. Apple has a lot of money. They don't need $100 billion. They want to do something with the money they have. So they announced that today they're going to be paying a dividend and buying back $10 billion of its stock. Starting sometime after July 1st, investors will receive a quarterly dividend of $2.65 a share, with buybacks kicking off on September 30th. The shares are up $7 this morning after briefly visiting 600 last week. Tim Cook said in a release, "We have used some of our cash to make great investments in our business through increased research and development, acquisitions, new retail store openings, strategic prepayments, and capital expenditures in our supply chain and building out our infrastructure. You'll see more of all of these in the future. Even with these investments, we can maintain a war chest for strategic opportunities and have plenty of cash to run our business. So we are going to initiate a dividend and share repurchase program." So essentially what this means is they're giving a lot of money back to their shareholders, and a lot of analysts think this will also help entice people to buy shares in Apple, even though that's not necessarily something Apple needs right now, sitting at $600 a share. You really don't need any incentive to purchase Apple stock right now, but if you need any more incentive, this certainly helps. Giving money back to shareholders is certainly a good way. A lot of analysts see to use this money. But this still gives Apple a considerable amount of money to sit on, a considerable cash hoard, something they can certainly do a lot with. But essentially the idea here was they didn't need all the money they had. They wanted to do something with a lot of the cash they had, and so they decided to give some of it back to shareholders. Also announced today, Tim Cook said that there was a record sales for iPad 3. I want to go over this just kind of real quick because everybody kind of blows this up to be something, hugely important. And while it's important that they sold a lot of iPads, it's not unexpected or breaking news. That was, we didn't know how much a lot was or how much record sales were, but it has now been confirmed that 3 million iPads were sold in the first 4 days of it being on the market, so that's a lot. We don't actually know how many iPad 2s or original iPads were sold in that particular time frame because those numbers weren't released, but analysts speculate that there were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 500,000 to a little north of 1 million sold in the first few days. So iPad 3 sales certainly outstripping iPad 2 sales in the first couple of days. Not really should be a surprise to anybody, and now that iPad has solidified themselves as easily the go-to tablet in the market, you would imagine that everybody would go out and buy one, especially if they were considering or sitting on buying an iPad 2 recently. Other big news today, this story just doesn't want to go away. Mike Daisey, who did the theatrical one-man show about the Foxconn factories in China, Apple's factories, has been under heightened scrutiny lately because the NPR show, This American Life, that released his one-man show as a documentary, retracted that release and said that it was not factual. There were a lot of fallacies in it, and a lot of it basically just wasn't true. Mike Daisey has kind of been on a crusade lately to tell people, well, it was true. Part of it was true. On his blog today, he wrote, quote, 4 hours of grilling edited down to 15 minutes. I thought the dead air was a nice touch, and finishing the episode with audio pulled out of context for my performance was masterful. That's in response to Ira Glass, who questioned Daisey on his show about the one-man documentary he produced. Mike Daisey has also said in his blog today that he will not go silent. He wrote a post in which he says he stands by his apology, but that he will, quote, not go silent. He says he'll make a full accounting of how he created his show, presumably revealing which details are true and which ones he took dramatic license with. His original excuse was that he was a one-man show. This was for theatrical purposes. So some of it was certainly true, but not everything was necessarily 100% factual. And so he says that he will release what is exact and what's fact and what's fiction. So expect that from Mike Daisey, but a story that's certainly not going away because it made a lot of noise in terms of putting pressure on Apple and what was going on at the Foxconn factory. In mobile news today, a new rumor has surfaced from tech site S4RU.com that says the HTC One X, the much lauded new HTC phone, which is their top-of-the-line phone that's sporting a dual-core or a quad-core processor, rather, all the latest specs, Sense 4.0, all these great things. Well, this report says that it's actually coming to Sprint. There's been a lot of noise as to which carrier was going to get this. AT&T first confirmed plans to bring a more pared-down version of the phone to their network, a dual-core handset. There's been rumors that Verizon would gobble it up. There were certainly rumors that T-Mobile had already called dibs on it. Now Sprint is saying, or not saying, but this report is saying Sprint is going to try to get it on their network, citing unnamed sources at the carrier. The One X will be Sprint's first 4G LTE device and could land in stores as soon as June 10th. That would give Sprint actually 2 LTE devices. The Galaxy Nexus will show up on Sprint once their LTE network gets built out a little bit more. But it looks like this will be the same kind of pared-down version we're going to see AT&T potentially release, a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core processor instead of the quad-core processor that HTC was originally packing into the device. A great phone nonetheless, great hardware build it looks like, and obviously speed with a good dual-core like that, but nonetheless, you want to see that quad-core processor because that was really the meat and potatoes of that phone originally. Another report today says that Windows 8, the new Microsoft operating system, will reportedly be finished by the summer, or will continue work on the summer, and will be released sometime around October. Bloomberg has the source, has a report citing people with knowledge of the schedule, and they also report that there will be fewer than 5 devices running the ARM system on a chip architecture at launch. Those ARM chips allow for a thinner, lighter tablet, which is something that Microsoft says will help them go after the iPad. But this is really no surprise. Microsoft routinely releases operating systems in October, so that's really nothing new. But it's nice to have maybe a confirmed report here that October will be the date of launch. And certainly we already know that many tablet makers, Lenovo, Dell, HP, and many others, Nokia also in there, have lined up and said we're going to release Windows 8 tablets as soon as the day that Windows 8 is launched. Zynga is making some noise today because they are apparently in talks to acquire OMG Pop, which is the maker of a massive hit Draw Something, the app that has kind of taken the web and mobile devices by storm. This is according to a source with direct knowledge of the discussions reported by TechCrunch. OMG Pop has raised about $17 million to date, which would put the acquisition from Zynga's point of view to about $150 million to $250 million range. It would be Zynga's biggest public disclosed acquisition to date. They do have a track record of acquiring mostly small teams of talent priced in the $5 million to $20 million range, but this has kind of been an app that has taken over not only Facebook, but has taken over mobile devices and has really kind of ousted Zynga as the leader in social gaming. And Zynga not too happy about it. Hey, see if you can't beat them, join them. We'll buy them, and then we'll make them go away. And finally today, Pew has released their social media report for 2012. And it shows some interesting things. For starters, Facebook usage is up. Pew says there are 133 million users in the U.S. That's up from 117 million users last year. And those users spend 423 minutes a month on the social network. Tumblr came in second in terms of use with 151 minutes. Pinterest was third at 80 minutes. And MySpace actually beat out Google+, 13 minutes to 5 minutes. So Google+ being really abysmal with the amount of time people are spending on it. Twitter is growing as well, 24 million active users in the U.S. according to eMarketer. That's an estimated 32% increase from last year. News consumption was an interesting analysis. Only 9% of the average news organization's traffic comes from social media, and 9% of online consumers of news in the U.S. very often get their news from Facebook or Twitter. So not necessarily the big news driver we see them to be, but still 10% of traffic from news organizations and 10% of people say they get their news from Facebook and Twitter. However, those numbers are up from 2010, and outlets with more developed social media strategies tend to see more traffic from Facebook than Twitter. Meanwhile, most Facebook users who use the site for news click on articles posted by their families and friends, where Twitter followers usually click on news posted by outlets or people within those outlets. So a clear distinction with how news is disseminated amongst those two platforms. That is your tech and social media news for today, Monday, March 19th, 2012, in under 10 minutes. Check us out on Twitter, at TechDailyRTM. I am at Jacob Bodner on Twitter. You can tell us what you think about the show or join in the discussion. We will elaborate on these stories and so much more on the next episode of Status Update, which is coming up Sunday, March 25th at 7 p.m. Eastern. So get your comments and thoughts in ahead of time, and we will certainly talk about them on the show. You can email the show directly at su@redtie.tv. Until tomorrow, have a great evening.